Hello to everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Yes, Lakshmi.
Ma'am, we are going to, we'll wait for 5 more minutes because there are other students who will be joining in some time.
Sure.
So we'll start the session maybe in another 5-10 minutes maximum.
Sure. Hi, Indranil. Hi, Chinmay. You're all able to hear?
Yeah, ma'am. It's all good.
Yes, loud and clear.
Good evening, everyone, to all the panelists and the participants. A warm welcome to today's session on Unveiling Union Budget 2022. Now, before we begin today's session, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Professor Dr. Hema Duraswami. She is Professor of Finance at WeSchool, Bangalore. Talking about her education, she has done PhD from Banstali University, Coimbatore. She has also done MPhil, MBA Finance and BCom. She holds 16 years of experience in teaching and research. She has taught various subjects like financial accounting, financial management, business ethics, and corporate governance. We welcome you, ma'am. Our second speaker for today is Mr. Chinmay Bhatt. Presently, he is working as US SOX risk auditor at Oracle India Private Limited. He has done CA and BCom at MGM College, Udupi. He has worked as article assistant at BKCO, Bangalore. He is also working as teaching faculty at First Sign Academy and ICAI, Bangalore. We welcome you, sir. Our third speaker for today is Mr. Indranil Saha. He is working as regional head South India at DBS Bank. He has done his PGDM MBA from IIM Calcutta. He has experience in business development, relationship management, transaction banking, and financial service. In addition, he is skilled in client coverage, risk management, business development, trade finance, cash management, credit risk, and underwriting. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Before beginning with the session, actually today we are going to conduct a small quiz. So there is few guidelines. Hema ma'am will take the quiz, but as soon as ma'am asks you a question, you need to give the answer in the chat box within first 5 seconds. So that's a rule. And during the session, like in the panel discussion, if you have any question, that you can post it in the Q&A box. But right now for the quiz, you have to be very quick and post your answers in the chat box. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Hope we are all clearly audible. Okay. So welcome to the panel discussion. So I can see around 130 attendees in the attendees list. It's good to see that so many of you are looking forward to understand about the budget. Generally, when we say budget, many people feel that it is a very, very complicated topic, and many of you might be coming from different backgrounds, and you might have that kind of a mental block. Many of us do have a kind of a mental block. Today, I was just observing a small video clip which is running around in the social media. Most of you might have seen as well. A very, very popular politician, he's telling Nirmala Sitharaman that whenever budget he is passed, now that he is holding a very senior position in a government and he's running a government, so he has to know. So he is telling about few years back. So he mentioned that whenever people used to say budget around 15-20 years back, I used to go completely clueless. And before even the budget was passed, previous day, I used to keep my reactions ready. So saying that, okay, these are some of the common reactions that are passed in the budget. So I would just say that the moment people come ask for me the reactions about budget. So that's the kind of normally we have a kind of opinions on the budget. So just to make things a little lighter and to make all of you understand that this can be a fun activity too, we are hosting this quiz. And the idea of running this quiz is Mr. Indranil Saha gave this idea. Thank you, Indranil, for doing this. And I hope all of you enjoy this. So let's start the quiz. As ma'am mentioned, there is a slight concern in giving the option to unmute when the PPTs are shared. So we are not able to do this. But probably you have to put the answer within first 5 seconds. The reason being, as all of you know, if we give more time, then you will all start Googling the answers. So there is no fun in that, right? So you have to give the answer within 5 seconds, first 5 seconds. So let's take they are all very simple questions related to the budget. Let's start. First question. Yeah, who presented the first budget of independent India on November 26, 1947? Here we go. One chat box, we have an answer. Indira Gandhi, Shanmukham, Vallabhai Patel. Okay, now let's take the answer. Lakshmi. Okay, so congratulations to all of you who mentioned Shanmukham Chetty. Let's move on to the next question. Who presented the highest number of budgets? Okay, so a lot of answers there. Let's go ahead, Lakshmi. Answer. Lakshmi, we can go ahead with the answer. Okay, it's Morarji Desai. We saw few of you answering Morarji Desai. Good to know.
And he presented 10 budgets, overall.
Wonderful. Yeah, next question. Who made the longest budget speech ever? We know the shortest budget speech, but we're asking who made the longest budget speech ever? Okay, many answers. Lakshmi, we can go ahead with the answer. I think most of you got it correct. It's Nirmala Sitharaman, 1 hour, 40 minutes, I guess. Someone has put the clear duration as well. Good. Next question. Who is the first woman to present the budget in independent India? Okay, most of the answer says Indira Gandhi. Let's see the answer. It's indeed Indira Gandhi. Good. Next question. So which event is organized by the Finance Ministry at its headquarters in the North Block basement every year to mark the beginning of the lock-in period for officials? Okay. Halwa ceremony is the only answer I can see till now. It is Halwa ceremony. Very good. So looks like all of you follow the budget pre and post activities as well very keenly. Next question. Which budget is known as the black budget? '77, 78, 78, 77, 73, 73, 74, 77. Okay, Lakshmi, can we have the answer?
Yeah, and I think it's 73, 74. Whoever has given is also the correct answer. It was in fact presented by Yashwant Chauhan, and the year is 73, 74. So congrats to everybody who has said 73, 74 as well.
So which budget is known as the carrot and stick budget? VP Singh, 2086, 87, 2001, 86, 87. Okay, many of you are saying 86, 87. The union budget presented by VP Singh. Okay, Lakshmi, next question. Which budget is known as the dream budget? '91, 97, 91. Okay, Lakshmi, can we have the answer? Chidambaram's budget.
97, 98 is a year.
Internet, there is a question. Why is it called like this?
Okay, so this is because I think Chidambaram used the Laffer principle to lower tax rates to increase collections. So he believed that if we reduce tax rates, then more and more people will, pay tax, and thereby the collections, the revenue collections will increase. So what he did is he slashed marginal income tax rate for individuals from 40% to 30%. Today we are at 30%, and domestic companies tax rate was, I think it was reduced to 35%. Apart from that, he has conducted, or rather incorporated, a number of tax reforms which helped in collecting more revenues. Because the tax rates were slashed drastically across various sectors, it's called a dream budget.
I think Hema ma'am's screen is frozen. Indranil sir, can you take
Yeah,
the
sure.
question?
So the next question, as you can see in the screen, is which budget is known as the Millennium budget? I'm getting answers 2000, 2000, 2001. Okay. Perfect. I think 2000 is the right. Yeah, let's go to the answer. 2000 is the right answer, and many of you are actually giving 2000. So congratulations for that. Okay, what is the current budget 2022 popularly known as in the political and administrative circles? The budget of last week, what is it popularly known as in the political and administrative circles? Futuristic budget, okay, interesting. Black and white, okay. Budget of the future, dream budget. Okay. Let's move to the answer, please. We call it once in a century budget because, according to Nirmala Sitharaman, she believed that this budget has been introduced to revive India, or rather Asia's third largest economy, by investing in infrastructure and healthcare, and with aggressive privatization strategy and robust tax collections. And hence, she coined this as once in a century budget.
Okay. That's great, sir. Sir, before beginning with the panel discussion, I would like you and Chinmay Bhatt, sir, to give opening notes for this budget session, and then we'll start with the panel discussion. Meanwhile, Hema ma'am will also join in. So starting with Sir, Indranil sir, yeah, please give your remarks about budget 2022.
Okay, all right. So, look, I mean, first of all, before we talk about budget 2022 and before we, define budget 22 as good, bad, or ugly, or rather good, average, or bad, let us understand that the budget is very huge, right? And we look at it from different lenses. A salaried person will look at it from a certain lens. A corporate will look at it from a certain lens. Within corporates, different sectors will look at budget from different lenses. So I will hold my response to the budget, or I will hold my response, say, in terms of classifying the budget as good, bad, or ugly. I will not define that way. What we will try and endeavor is to basically give you certain facets of the budget across various sectors, across various industries, and so on and so forth. So that's the preliminary idea of this session. Of course, you can ask us questions and then we will try and answer that. But broadly, by and large, what we have found out is that this budget is focused on, I would say, 4 priorities or 4 pillars, if I may put it that way. The first is the Prime Minister's Gati Shakti, strategy that is there. The second is inclusive development. The Third is productivity enhancement and investment, including sunrise opportunities, energy transition, and climate action. And fourth is financing of this investment. So I would believe that these are the four pillars on which the budget 2022 has been laid down this year. Now, if we look at infrastructure investment, so we talked about four pillars, right? Number one, infrastructure investment. Second is demand generation and employment. Third is business environment and ecosystem. And fourth is climate change and sustainability. So to my mind, these are the four pillars on which the budget has been delivered. Within infrastructure investment, which is the first pillar, if you ask me for a view, I would say, let's break it up into various categories, right? So let's break it up into social infrastructure. Within social infrastructure, and we'll go into details of each of these pieces, but within social infrastructure, I think around 600 billion rupees, roughly 600 billion rupees of INR was allocated for 38 million households to get piped water. Okay, then around 200,000 Anganwadis was upgraded to focus on child health. Villages, a number of villages were identified, which will be connected using optical fiber under the Bharat Net project through a PPP model. And they have said that they are going to accomplish this by 2025. So broadly, these are the three things which are there under social infrastructure or social infrastructure. Then comes education. So in this specific budget, we have seen that the government has introduced certain measures to ensure that education reaches all and sundry. And interestingly, they have used digital means to deliver that. So we'll discuss about the details, but several channels, several portals have been collaborated. They have done a collaboration with various teams to ensure that education reaches the last mile through various digital means. Then comes the physical infrastructure, and everyone is talking about this piece, physical infrastructure, which is also called CAPEX. As we know from our Economics 101, government plays a primary role in boosting the economy. So there are two ways of doing it, right? Either you introduce government spends or you give more cash for consumer spends. In this specific budget, government spends has seen a huge kicker. So if you have to take a few highlights of the CAPEX which has been introduced, I recall the government has taken a very aggressive target in road development. I think around 25,000 kilometers is the target that they've taken next year for 22-23. They were talking about some 100 new cargo terminals in the next 3 years, to develop 100 new cargo terminals in the next 3 years. There is an initiative to boost railways, affordable housing under the PM Awas Yojana scheme. They were talking about having a unified data center so that all related data can be collected, and then we can use this. And of course, this has been, they were able to do that because of massive increase in GST collections. And I'm sure many of you would know that last January, the GST collections was at its peak, right? So broadly, these are the things which has been done in the infrastructure space. Of course, we can talk about the other sectors later. In demand generation and employment space, there were a lot of schemes which has been introduced, or rather targets were taken, steep targets were taken. For example, around 2.37 trillion rupees worth of MSP direct payments through farm procurement to farmers has been taken so that rural demand can be boosted. There are several PLI schemes which the government has been discussing and introducing through the last year. So I think PLI schemes in 14 sectors were introduced. That will have the potential to create around, they are estimating around 6 million new jobs, 60 lakh new jobs. A lot of financial support has been given to the MSME sector, the infrastructure sector, energy sector. National Capital Goods Policy 20 was launched with the intention of doubling the production. And of course, this will lead to further employment opportunities. We will also talk in detail about climate change and sustainability and business environment and ecosystem. What are some of the things that we have done? But overall, I think the blueprint from India at 75 to India at 100 has been laid down, on these 4 pillars with a clear message that government is ready to invest in infrastructure and social sectors. There will be, and they were also expecting the private sector to participate and jointly invest along with the government, and then take the economy to a $5 trillion economy that we are all dreaming about. So I would say that that's in a nutshell what this budget is all about, the way I understood this budget. Of course, we'll get into nitty-gritties because there are a lot of things which are, I would say, misses. But then, of course, you cannot have everything in one platter when you present a budget. Okay. Over to you, Chaitanya.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, Chinmay sir, your opening remarks, and then we'll start with the panel discussion.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this platform. I think Indranil sir already told each and everything clearly, and most of the students still, are in quiz mode or something. So I just don't want to put some technical or just saying like something the government has done. I just want to be in layman's language. I just give my starting note. When I was studying the Chartered Accountants course, the budget day was a huge, kind of a biggest ceremony day for me, because there are 2 things. One is what the government says about the tax, especially because how much additionally we have to study for the examination, right? When I was studying, so that was there in my mind. And the second thing is, of course, market. So if you're trading or if you're an investor, definitely you come to know the emotion of the budget day. So these were the 2 things I was like waiting for the budget. So being a finance minister of the country, it's not an easy task, right? Because that too in the pandemic situation, it's very difficult. Also, I would say that if we do monthly budget or yearly budget, at last we tend to face many problems. So by taking into consideration, overall situation, the present situation, I would say the overall budget is quite good when compared to the past some 3 to 4 budgets. And also the developing countries like India, it has used the cryptocurrencies, the video games, DAS, that's known as services. So all these electrified words, electrified reforms are really good for the development of the economy. And also, most of you might have seen the markets, right? So investors had already accepted the market, and the massive rally we could see in the budget day. There was a very good rally in the market. So overall, I would see that it's a pro-growth budget. And also, I would say that I think not only the students asking the question, we shall talk about this crypto and other things later. So I would say that overall, it's a very good budget when compared to the earlier budget. So I think we can just start with the question and answer sessions with the main question as well as the students' question, instead of simply telling some general things. Over to you, I think. Yeah.
Okay, Lakshmi, I'll take on from here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Indranil and Chinmay, for your opening remarks. In fact, I wanted to give general information about the budget and then start with the discussion. But due to network issue, I have to drop out, and that's fine that the discussion has happened. But only one thing, what I want all the students to understand is you must know the larger aspects of budget, right? So it is not that on the day of the budget, you see what has been announced and it's over. So you wait for next year, February 1st to see the budget. So all of you should understand the larger implications of the budget. When you look at the budget allocation, or when you look at the changes in the tax rates, or when you look at the various incentives that the government comes up with. So it is from a longer vision, right? And from a longer perspective. So it sets a direction for the kind of goals that the government has for itself, Now, if you see infrastructure spending is huge this time. Now, what is the outcome of it? That means the government has plans to create a good infrastructure for the industry. It's not just the industry infrastructure, but it's also the social infrastructure as well. You see so many social benefit schemes coming into picture, right? And also a budget has two aspects, revenue and capital. So all of you should remember this. The revenue budget is basically people who are coming from accounting background, all of you will be aware of it. It is a yearly expenditure, which generally is shown in the P&L, even in the company's context, whereas capital expenditure is for creating a long-term impact, right? And the terms like fiscal deficit, which basically indicates your revenues and expenses, right? Your deficit, it is basically your spending is more than your revenues. So which keeps coming up all the time, right? So in the budgets too, people keep saying, okay, this is the fiscal deficit. And when we say, sometimes it is revised. Most of the times you can observe it keeps being revised and increasing fiscal deficits you can see. So these are some of the important components all of you should remember. More than just observing about just the numbers. Just now I saw somebody putting a message in the group that 30% tax on cryptocurrency is not justified. So there could be reasons for it, and there could be, but all of us should be happy that at least they are being considered as legal assets to invest, right? All these days we didn't even have that clarity. So that's how the reforms start, right? So this is about some of the important components I wanted to share with all of you. And let's start with the discussion. This budget was a very, very toughest budget that the government had to present, because for the obvious reasons, as all of you know, it is the second year of the pandemic, and everybody were expecting a lot of soaps from the government. There were expectations on taxes, tax reduction, there were expectations from the industry. So everyone were expecting a lot of things, but then government was having a lot of their own problems, say for example, for these vaccinations, and the spending has been a lot in the healthcare. So everyone were looking at how the budget will be and what kind of reforms or what kind of budget allocation will be done. Now that we have the figures with us, I would like to know from both the panelists, given the constraint this particular year the government was facing, do you think they have done a fair job? And how do you see this budget reviving the economy from the current muted growth and a lot of economic crisis that we have? Chinmay, may I ask you to go first?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Actually, if you ask me, of course, it's a debatable topic, as well as everyone's perspective is completely different. But I just stick to the tax perspective, because the people, whenever the government announces the budget, the people, those who are paying tax or not paying a tax, everyone will talk about the tax. Government should something do about the tax, but budget is not equals to the income tax, right? We should think like broader, we should think other reforms, whether government has justified or not. So this time also,
can I just add a fun fact here? Recently,
yeah, sure.
I was reading somewhere, somebody had put a very interesting statistic. So they said the tax paid by, the taxpayers in India is close to 7 crore, whereas 140 billion people will be upset when the tax rates are not changed or it is reduced. So that's the, the irony, right? So everybody looks at budget from a tax perspective, which should not be.
Yeah, so that's why one more post I have seen that do anything like taxpayers get thank you, thanks for your contribution, like that some troll was happening. So, but I just want to say that it's budget is not only like about the income tax, right? If you ask me as an individual taxpayers, I would definitely say that we did not get any incentive, because everyone, individual taxpayers, I just specifically mentioned the salaried person. So everyone was talking something, reduction in the tax rate or increase in the threshold limit like that, but government did not do anything. But keeping aside that thing, so what government has done for other sectors? So for example, so government for the startup thing, they have done more justification, because to develop the country, startup thing and infrastructure, those things the government should give like more priority instead of simply saying or simply reducing the tax rate for an individual. It's not the government is getting some more revenue, or it's not that the India will directly jump into the from the developing to the developed country. So that's why the government, what they have done is in the broader sense they thought, and that's why they have given like for startup companies and also the for the cooperatives, AOPs, for everything we can just talk about later, the tax perspective in the next question. But what the government has done is by taking the broader sense, they have just given justification for the startups and as well as some other sectors. Of course, many will tell that the government has completely ignored the individual taxpayers. Also, we cannot expect every year the government should change the tax rate, or we cannot expect the government to give like justification or anything like for the individual taxpayers. So one more thing I just want to additionally add up to this, because for example, government could have done increase in the threshold limit, because now it's like 5 lakhs. If you have the income up to 5 lakhs, it's the tax completely nil, means under section 87A you will get the rebate. So government could have increased to 10 lakhs. So it, because it's like a maximum relief for the middle class people, those who are paying the tax to the government are like will be in the bracket of 5 to 10 lakhs. So I would say that government might have increased the threshold limit to 10 lakhs. And talking about the incentives, as an individual, I would say that under section chapter 6A, the government could have increased from 1.5 lakh cap to the 3 lakhs, and as well as some other standard deduction of 50 to 1 lakh, like that. Of course, hoping next year they would do. But overall, as I said in the starting note as well, as it's a pro-growth budget, so we cannot like stick to, and we cannot like stick with the tax perspective, and we cannot say that budget is not good, because there is saying that positive news is a positive news, no negative news also a positive news. So I would take that since there is no negative news in the tax perspective, so it's a kind of good budget. We cannot say that it's not a good budget, or government did not concentrated on the middle class or the individual taxpayers. So overall, it was a happy budget for most of the experts as well as the economists. That's my view.
Indirect, may I have your comments?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Ma'am, it's a very interesting race, right? I was looking at some of the chats which Pratik, Anirudh, Prithvi mentioned, and they were talking about inflation. They were talking about the fact that our budget, there is a deficit and all that. And in fact, thanks guys. I mean, you are actually bringing in a lot of good insights. So let me put it this way, right? Let's look at the numbers. Our expenditure, and all of us for the moment, let's put ourselves in the shoes of, very difficult, but in the shoes of Nirmala Sitharaman. For the country, so budget is one facet, as we mentioned, right? But she has other objectives as well, other key areas as well to deliver for the country as a finance minister. Now, the expenditure for the country is 39.45 lakh crores, right? Let's say approximately 39 lakh crores. The revenue which you earn from various sources, from your taxes, non-taxes, etc., is around 22.84 lakh crores. Let's say 22.5 lakh crores. That leaves us with a deficit of almost 17 odd lakh crores, right? And this is a reality, okay? This was not born today. This is a reality. We had been living with a deficit budget for quite some time. And all of us are aware that we have taken an objective. As a country, we have taken an objective to reduce the deficit. But to what extent? And it takes time. It doesn't happen in a jiffy. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is that you need to have growth, right? Again, we have taken another objective to become a $5 trillion economy, correct? And we have taken around 9.2% odd growth target, right? How do you accomplish this? Because if again, economics 101, you guys would know, if you are promoting growth, you are giving a lot of incentives, you are lowering down the interest rates and doing all of that. But what happens? Inflation goes up. You must have seen in through the last few months, commodity prices have already gone up, right? So the supply side inflation is already up there. And if you have to grow, you have to give more incentives, inflation goes up. Now, you cannot be in a situation that inflation goes up to a certain extent that it will come back to you later. So you have to control the inflation. So the poor lady has to take care of inflation, has to take care of growth, and at the same time ensure that the objectives are met in terms of making India a $5 trillion economy, reducing the deficit to 3 to 4% over a certain period of time, and so on and so forth. So for her, please, let's appreciate that it's a really, really difficult job that she has to do. Not easy. Okay. So while we, criticize or appreciate the budget, I would reckon that let us all look at this particular problem that she has to solve while delivering the budget for all of us. And it has nothing to do with a party. It's about any finance minister for that matter, given the position that we are in. We will definitely go into each and every sector. Like a lot of people would say that healthcare, for example, has received a significantly lower budgetary allocation this year. Is it justified? Debatable. We will debate that. Education, while there are certain schemes which has been introduced, but in terms of the budgetary allocation, there is hardly anything, not much. Whatever was there last year continues this year. Defense, in the world that we live in today, the defense budget was increased by only 5%. Is it good enough? Because inflation is around 8-10%. Defense budget increasing by 5% means you are actually taking a lower number. Yeah, a lot of technological investment is happening in the defense, and that's why you don't need to hire or pay salary for so many footfalls and so on and so forth. But still, it's debatable. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying it's debatable. Disinvestment has not happened the way it should have happened. I think the target for disinvestment was taken as 65,000 crores. Last year, it was 1,75,000 crores. And last year, except Air India and one more company, hardly any disinvestment has happened, right? So should government have taken a higher disinvestment target? All of these are debatable and questionable, and that is something that we will discuss as we roll on.
And also, I just want to add one more point, because it's not that, how much money they are going to allocate. It's that how much money they are actually using for those things. So that's very much important. So government should focus on that. I think in chat box, I can see that food, how starvation rate or many other things, particularly the technical parts and the numbers they are just putting. But I just want to see that in budget, we can see, okay, the government has spent 46,000 crores, 1.5 crores or some crores like that, but actually it's using or not. Definitely, I'm not going to, putting the fragrance of the politics, but I just want to, government should give actually how much they have spent in next year. So that's the important thing.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the budget for the year 2022. Now let's move on to some specifics. So some of the important announcements having been made. The first important thing that all of us were happy when the announcement was done was the GST collection, right? It's around 1,40,986 crore GST collection, and it's the highest since the inception of GST. Mr. Indranil, if I have to ask you, this GST collection, which is very huge, how do you view it as an economic indicator, and what kind of a forecast we can make from this particular collection? And also, which are the sectors which has contributed? Because in the last 2 years, there are only few sectors that are doing well. So it was really a kind of a situation where certain sectors were completely muted growth, and in fact they were not posting any kind of a profits at all. Say for example, hospitality and these kind of industries. But whereas certain industries, especially like IT, they were doing exceedingly well. So I would like to know which are the key contributors for this, and as an economic indicator, what does this mean to us, this highest GST collection?
Sure. So while we talk about this, I just want all of you guys to take note of one thing. If you look at the last quarter result, or rather, let's say, last couple of quarter results of all companies, you will see that cement sector broadly has grown by around 18-20%. Consumer durables have grown by around 20-22%. Real estate housing is coming up the curve. Commodities is growing again. That's again because of inflationary prices largely, but commodity prices have increased. Aluminum prices have increased, steel prices have increased, and that sector is also doing well, both in capital markets as well as in the real markets. So what we're trying to tell you here is that I am of that school of thought, and there are different schools of thought, but personally I am in that school of thought who believes that we are poised to have the next level of growth. There will be challenges. I saw one particular point mentioned by one of you in terms of the deficit, and today, we are looking at fuel at $90 a barrel, right? Brent is at $90 a barrel. Experts are of the opinion that if the feud which is there between Ukraine and Russia, if that escalates into a war situation, we are looking at $126 a barrel. India has huge requirements of oil imports, as all of you are aware of. And if that happens, that will create a lot of pressure on us, and the deficit will only increase further. So how do we breach that deficit? We'll talk about all of this. But coming to the specific question that we discussed. So I'm of that school of thought that we are at the cusp of to take a leap to the next level. In terms of the specifics, right? Yes, Jan 2022, we have seen a huge number, 1,40,000 crores kind of a GST collections. If I give you some numbers out of that 1,40,000, I think CGST is around 24,000, 25,000, SGST is around 32,000, IGST is around 72,000 crores broadly. I think the second highest was April 2021, and then we have seen this kind of a momentum. But experts are of the opinion that this is a new normal. We're looking at 1,30,000, 1,35,000 crores of GST income through the next few months and years. Now, of course, this figure represents a robust recovery in the economy. We can look at sectors like, as I mentioned, IT sector, pharma has done relatively well. You have the building and material, direct building and material, and the indirect building and material sector, like your paint sector, your adhesive sectors, and all these things, all those sectors doing very well. And hence, what we strongly believe is that we are looking at an economic normalization. The run rate for indirect tax collection is expected to improve to a monthly rate of around 1.3 trillion rupees. Apart from this growth in these sectors, what I would also like to highlight is a couple of things. There are certain measures which has been taken by the ministry, which has also helped in this particular cause. Measures like anti-evasion activities. There is a lot of focus which has been given to anti-evasion activities. Action against fake billers. This has been contributing to enhanced GST. And apart from that, of course, there is rate rationalization measures have also been taken to ensure that the overall collection, GST collection, is much more. I would just like to end this by highlighting one particular feature. One of the reasons, apart from sectoral growth, one of the reasons for buoyancy in GST collection has been the government's crackdown on fake invoices and unauthorized availment of input credit. Yep. The government they're keen to intensify its efforts in this direction. And in the budget itself, you would have heard, they have introduced rigorous provision in the GST law, which requires recipient to reverse credit where GST has not been paid by the supplier, and also to restrict the GST credit to the recipient basis the extent allowed in an auto-generated statement. So you just don't have any provision to hoodwink the government. I think these are broadly some of the steps which has been taken and which has contributed to a higher GST collections. And I firmly believe that this is going to be the new normal in the next few months.
Thank you, Indranil. And it's indeed very encouraging to see that this could be a path for our robust growth and recovery. So the next question, Chinmay, if I can ask you, as you also saw in the chat box, there are very strong reactions for this 30% tax on digital assets transfer. So what's your take on it? That's the first question. And secondly, government has also announced that they will come up with a digital currency. So can you throw some light on this? What exactly is a digital currency and how it will be used? And secondly, why this 30% tax? I mean, isn't it really discouraging for the investors?
Sure. Actually, when the Nirmala Sitharaman ji announced, so the government is going to tax on crypto 30%. Many of my friends called who are trading with the crypto, hey bro, so again I have to pay tax and I have to file the return. Like that they asked. But one thing we have to keep in mind that earlier in April 2021, if I'm not wrong, the government told that they're going to ban the crypto. Though there was no like pakka news on that, but the government told that they're going to ban the crypto. By seeing the positive side, we have to think that, so of course, crypto is not good. We can just talk about that individually. And by just thinking that the government is like, saying that you have to pay 30% tax, we can indirectly say that government is planning to legalize these channels like BTC, ET or DigiCoins, many other coins. Of course, the government did not tell that they're going to legalize, but since they're going to like put the tax on that cryptocurrencies, I could say that in near future, the government is planning to make it legalized. So I think in future would be the crypto only. And also we need to think one thing that the government said that it is a digital asset, not only the crypto. What is digital asset? So 247 clause 47A says that this digital asset is nothing but like the coins or any tokens, which is in a encrypted manner. So cryptographic like manner. So all this comes under the digital assets. So it's not only the cryptocurrency, I would say, and also of course NFT included. So that's nothing but the video games. As I told at my short like the speech, it's NFT. So what's happening is some infrastructure people will come that, hey, can you just make me a like model or something? So what will happen is I just do some create some infrastructure model and I just sell to them. So it's also called as the virtual digital asset. So that's also taxable. And also one more thing is that it's not only like cryptos and these kinds of things, any series, because if you do any like games or if you do any series, then you're just going to like sell that to somebody else, right? I think it's just a story, or it's just, I mean, I don't know the exact figure. Some Amitabh Bachchan's series has sold for 1 trillion or something, 1 trillion or million something. So what was happening was there was no, I think, exact like provision for how to tax on those things. So that's why the government said that we are going to like tax 30%. And also many of you are telling that 30% tax is not good because like it's a huge and all. But it's my personal opinion that, so what is happening is in the Income Tax Act of 1961, any income from the winnings, so say for example, gambling or the lottery, so all are going to tax at 30%. I'm not saying that crypto is a gambling or something, but government might have thought that it is a winning, the income from the winning. So that's why the government thought that we have to like, make sure that we have to segment, do this segment as a winning, and we have to like provide like 30% taxation. So that's my personal view. So expert have to say. And also one more thing, they told that there is no any deduction except apart from the some of the expenses that are like expenses done at the time of creating the virtual digital asset. So that is also, many of the like virtual digital creators might come and say that, hey, I'm just creating and my expense is so and so. You have to give me other deduction as well as like a normal income taxpayer. So all these things government have yet to clarify. And also this definition under clause 247A is like government yet to come and clarify. And in near future, we may expect the notification from the IT segment. And also, what is this RBI? Many of you might have confused crypto and what the government said RBI currency is the same. It's like working as like a normal cryptocurrencies like Bitcoins. You can just go and trade. It's not like that. Actually, the government is saying that it's like a normal fiat money, but they are going to make it as a digital form. That's it. It's like a normal money just to boost the digitalization of India. Please don't be confused. It's also same thing as a cryptocurrency, and you can just go and trade in that RBI, and it is legalized, and you can earn some money. But it's not like that. So what will happen is in future, the crypto might get legalized in near future, and also this RBI, the fiat money digitalization. So it's also very much easy to transact. Also, it's debatable. You may say that the cybercrime might increase or many other things like that, but we cannot like say that because of cybercrime, we cannot be, transacting online like that, right? So that's why it's a good initiation from the governments, and also it's acceptable. And 30% rate also, I don't feel that it's like, unjustifiable or something, because government is considering it's like amount earning from the winning. So that's why 30% slab is quite good. They might give some other deduction. So that's why everything done by the government in this virtual digitalization, it's good. And also they said that 1% TDS should be deducted and 1% TCS also should be corrected. So all these things make sense, and all these things I would say that government in near future, they're going to make cryptos like BTC and all the coins legalized, and aramse we can just trade. So banning will harm the economy. Of course, it will harm the economy, and it will, government will lose the revenue as well. So that's why wherever the government can earn money, they're not going to ban, right? So that's why they just introduced this 30% slab and the taxation. So that's why it's a good initiation from the government, I would say. And please don't be confused with the RBI digitalized currency with the crypto. So that's my view. So if you have like anything, you can just add on.
Yeah, so ma'am, if I may add a couple of pointers here, and I pick up from what Rajiv mentioned, that a single tweet from Elon Musk gives drastic change in digital market. It's not the way to legal digital currency in India. That's what Rajiv mentioned, right? And I to a large extent, agree with this, and that's where CBDC comes in. By, it's 30% plus you have 1% cess, so effectively you're paying 31% on your returns. And it's not only on the income. There are 2-3 things which are very important here. One is that on your gains you pay 31%, 30% plus 1% cess. Even if you gift it to somebody, you are still taxed. And if you make a loss there, then you cannot net it off against other, income of yours, right? So these are 3 important things for guys who are dealing in digital currency. You may like to take note of. On the CBDC piece, what I would like to highlight is that when the government backs a CBDC, it becomes very similar to a fiat currency. So the point which Rajiv mentioned, what happens is the variability of the asset, the riskiness of the asset substantially goes down, right? By doing this, and as Dr. Hema also highlighted initially, one good part is that we didn't have any clarity whatsoever whether we can trade in crypto, whether we can hold crypto, and so on and so forth. But if we just look at the bright side of things, tax apart, now at least we know that that's a legal tender, and we can have those as digital assets. Of course, you need to know your risk while you are investing, and so on and so forth. So I think I take this as a very positive, step, rather than worrying about the fact that I'm taxed 31%.
Yeah, just want to add, it's not legalized yet. So government might legalize, because they have clearly mentioned that, the stage of this cryptos, BTC and all still on hold. They have not legalized. In near future, they might do legalize, just for the clarification. And of course, as I rightly mentioned, I think 30% white tax because no set-offs. It's income from winnings. The same thing. What are the same rules are there? Income from the winnings. The same thing they are going to follow. I think for the crypto as well. That's why the rate is 30%.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the comment. So the two important takeaways is, one is that there might be some kind of a legal backup for this going forward. That is one. And Chinmay, as you mentioned, government will not leave an opportunity to collect taxes wherever it's possible. I was recently hearing in one of the other panel discussion. So regarding this, on the same topic. So in fact, one of the panelists said, even if they find out that something illegal business or something is going on, first thing happens is tax authorities will arrive there. They will say that you first pay the tax, then the legal proceedings will take care. So that's how so they are not bothered how you are running. You first pay the tax, then the other things will follow. So given the kind of setup we have, no doubt that crypto is being taxed at 30%. So of course, it might look as very high. So let's see how it pans out. And one good thing is, slowly we might see another good asset to invest. So it can add into our portfolios as a good asset. So that is a wish and hope for the future. So now let's get into the next section, which is in the budget, very, very important announcement, which has been, or for that matter, budget allocation has been made with regards to infrastructure, right? So majority of the reviews, when we are reading about the budget, many are agreeing that the allocation that has been made towards infrastructure is really very, very huge, and it is appreciable given the fact that the government was having so many constraints. It is in fact increased by 35.4% from last year to this year, from 4.54 lakh crores to 7.5 lakh crores, so which is a huge increase. And all of us know that this infrastructure investment is key for the economy to grow. Indranil, if I may ask you, what is your take on this infrastructure investment, this huge infrastructure investment that the government is making? As you rightly mentioned, it hasn't happened to education sector or the defense sector or even for the pharma sector, but a lot of focus has been given to infrastructure. So there must be some kind of a calculation that must have gone through. So what do you think, what should we make out of this huge increase in infrastructure spending, and what could be its outcome? Like, or how many years we may have to wait to see some kind of a fruits bearing out of this kind of investment?
All right. So let's look at the numbers, right? Before we talk about the numbers, let us understand that when a government spends, there is always a multiplier effect. Now, this multiplier impact takes time for the economy to see the value of it. But if the government spends on infrastructure, and let's take the original number, 7.5 lakh crores, right? That's the number which has been taken for public capex, which is your infrastructure development like roads, rails, ports, highways, etc. Last year it was 5.5 lakh crores, and actual spend was 6 lakh crores. But 6 lakh is the 50,000 more crores was because of Air India's liability. The government had to actually pay off Air India's liability before the sell-off. Now, we believe that a 7.5 lakh crore of capex investment for 1 year can actually lead to 40 to 50 lakh crore rupees in terms of the multiplier impact. Okay. Generally, capex always sees 7 to 8 times of multiplier impact. The Gati Shakti project, right? 25,000 kilometers of highway construction with an outlay of 20,000 crores. What will happen? So it is not only about the direct impact of laying the roads and employing people to construct those roads, highways, flyovers, etc. That anyway will generate employment, but also the fact that when a highway is made through a village, and I quote the chairman and MD of HUL, which is an FMCG company, and they say that when a highway is constructed through a village, they see that the turnover from that village in terms of FMCG consumption increases by 2 to 3 times, right? So it's not only the direct employment benefit of capex investment by the government, which will happen. It will also lead to those people earning more money and then spending in economy. That will lead to somebody else earning those income and then further spending, which is nothing but the multiplier effect impact, which is like 7 to 8 times broadly, as we have seen historically. But also the fact that the indirect impact of a road going, a railway going, a flyover happening, a port happening will lead to consumption in the economy, and which will have a direct impact in terms of the growth that we are all expecting. The other piece is the river interlinking. Okay, if this happens, I mean, if you go to any developed countries, if you go to, the European countries, the US countries, river transport, inland transport plays a very, very prominent role. They have taken a river interlinking project. Let's talk about, this is infrastructure in the physical world. Let's talk about the digital infrastructure also. 5G spectrum auction. If 5G spectrum auction happens, that will give additional revenue to the government, which will help them drive this capex spends. They're talking about creating 5 centers of excellences for urban city planning, where every center will receive an endowment of around 250 crores. Digital education, right? As I was alluding to in the beginning, they were looking at rolling out or opening up digital universities to provide education and e-vidya. They were talking about expanding e-vidya to 200 channels. I think now it's around, I don't recall the number, it's 20, 30 odd channels. So they're extending to 200 odd channels to promote education across the country. So I think this is definitely an investment in the right direction, because if we look at what happened in the last couple of years, we had liquidity. Interest rates were low. Companies had a lot of funds, because you can see that if you look at the sectoral balance sheet, you will see that there is a lot of cash surplus. There is a lot of good returns, which is happening. But real investment from the private sector was not forthcoming. And you would have heard various experts saying, and I completely echo the same, that, before I talk about the statement, I was speaking to, the chairman of Chamber of Commerce and to several industry heads, and they did mention that the element of trust has been reposed between the industry bodies and the government, which means that the government is now doing its bit in terms of laying down the digital and the physical infrastructure. It's now incumbent upon the private sector to put in their investment, and thereby leading to more multiplier impact, and which will ultimately help the economy. That's my read of the situation.
So indeed, it's very good to know that every spending that goes towards infrastructure, which has a multiplier effect of 6 to 7 times. So which means, as I could see a lot of messages in the chat box as well, many students are also mentioning how it will increase employment, trade, and business, and all of that. So it's good, and it's really an encouraging thing to see how it's going to pan out, provided, as Chinmay rightly mentioned, it's not just the allocation, but it should be used as well in the right projects. Chinmay, if I can move on to the specifics of tax rates. As we discussed, there is nothing that has been announced for individuals, but if you look at corporates, there is a slight reduction in the rebate, right? Surcharge, and also with regards to alternate minimum tax, there are certain changes which has been announced. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, of course, we all know that there is no changes in the normal slab rate. So up to 5 lakh, it's of course, we have the rebate under Section 87A, and 5 to 20%, and above 10, it's 30%. Nothing changed. But the AOP, the surcharge on AOP, has been slashed from 37 to 15%. Many of you might be wondering why on AOP, because nowadays in the country, the AOP, the registration of the AOPs are increasing. Association of person, it's nothing but, I could say, AOP is nothing but association of the person. 3 or more people will come together and they'll just do some of the business. It's for their own benefit, as well as for the benefit of the society and the others. In layman's language, I could say that everyone knows chit funds, right? So chit funds. I'm not saying that chit fund is an AOP, but it works like that, AOP. So surcharge was 37%. There is some threshold is there, slashed from 37 to 15%. It's a very good move. And also the AMT. What do you mean by AMT? It's an alternative minimum taxation. In corporate world, we have two types of tax calculation. One is normal tax calculation, that is 25%, 20%, 30%, depending on the types of the companies. And one more is the AMT, alternative minimum taxation. So whichever is higher, that particular company should pay the tax. So the cooperative societies are like, we are also doing business like the corporate. So why we have to pay 18.5%? Because the corporate, they're paying 50% AMT. So they're like, why we have to pay the 18.5% taxation? So it has been reduced from 18.5% to 15%. Really, it's a good move. And one more thing, I would say that tax holidays. So tax holidays, nothing but you'll get the exemption from paying the taxation. So for the new startups, it has been, I think, up to 2023, they have like extended the period. And one more thing is the startup manufacturing. So I think special startup manufacturing, we have the tax rate of 22%, I think. So for them also, the exemption from paying the tax has been increased, extended one more year. And one more important thing I would feel is IFSC, that is International Financial Asset Corporation. So it's there in Gujarat. So what they'll do is they'll do the business like SEZ, and also it's not applicable for the residents. It's applicable only to the non-residents. If they're doing the business, so the capital gain from the derivatives from the IFSC is completely exempt from tax. Say, for example, 1% you are earning from the derivatives as a capital gain. So it's completely exempt from tax. And of course, it will attract many NRs. So you may ask, so government is not collecting any tax from those NRs. So how it will be beneficial for the country, right? So everything we know that, okay, so if something is doing, the government is doing, the tax should be collected. So that is the main revenue for the government, right? So it is not like that. First, we have to attract basically the NRs. So that is foreign institutional investors. If you have seen the markets, I'm just giving the flavor of the stock market. What happened is from October to December, more than 1 lakh crore has been sold by the foreign institutional investors. So it's straight away, we can just say that they're not happy with the government of India, right? So we have to give something to them so that they can just come and invest in the infrastructure or any other business of the India. And the second thing is everything the DIS cannot be handled. So that's why the benefits for the FIIs, NRs, the government should think of that so that there is a bridge between India and the other countries, and also the NRs can come to India and they can just invest, so that investing in India will develop, as Indranil rightly told that time, infrastructure facilities and many other. And also what will happen is if they are coming to India and they are investing in India, and many other employment opportunity increases, so job and everything. So I would say that though there is no benefits for the individual taxpayers, so the one is AMT has been slashed from 18.5 to 15%. One is surcharge 37% to 15%. And IFSC, the capital gain from the IFSC is completely exempt. And one more thing is for the state government employees, the government has increased NPS 10 to 14%. So actually it's a good move, because what will happen is the investing mind will increase, and 14% for the NPS, the government also can get that money and they can just utilize for the purpose of the development. So all these, I cannot just go on listing each and every rates. Many other rates are there and many other reforms also done by the government. So these are all the major things, IFSC and some of the surcharge and also AMT rates. So these are all the major things government has done in this budget 2022. So that's my view.
Thank you, Chinmay, for sharing the more very important changes that have brought in the tax area for different type of taxpayers. So Chinmay, Indranil, this question is to you. There are certain specific announcements with reference to startups, some kind of tax incentives, and also defense R&D has for the first time been open to startups. Given the ecosystem that we have today, there are so many startups, and there is a lot of enthusiasm in coming to this field. Companies are enjoying very, very huge, sometimes unreasonable valuations. So there is a lot of growth, anticipated growth in this area. But at the same time, if you look at the ease of doing business rankings, which is released by the World Bank, we don't figure in the top performers. In fact, we are somewhere like say 140, 130. Those are the kind of rankings that we have among 180 countries that usually gets listed. So obviously we have to do something to go up in the ladder if we have to project ourselves as the startup hub. In your opinion, how startup friendly this budget has been, and what should more be done to make it even more easier and a kind of process driven for the startups?
I think it's a very interesting question. It's a good question, rather, because this is exactly what differentiates, let's say, a US or a China from India. We also have many startups. I think in the last couple of years, we have seen India becoming a startup hub, so to speak. It's a good trend. But how many of the startups have become, let's say, an Amazon, or Flipkart was there, Flipkart, but then again, Walmart took over. So it's no longer a Desi company, so to speak. How many of us have become a Google or a FANG company, as we say, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, etc. The number is very few, or rather hardly anything. So one is obviously to develop startups. Second is obviously to pave the way and support them so that they can grow on to become world leaders. Now, through the last couple of years, we have seen our Prime Minister has gone to various startup forums, startups, events, and he has done his bit to promote startups, to encourage startups, and so on and so forth. Specific to this budget, what has happened is there has been a scheme which was there for startups, which says that in 3 out of 10 years, they can use their net loss for tax exemption. That was for startups who were born or who was launched till March of 2022. That has now been increased by another year. So any startup which is forming till March 2023 will be able to get this benefit, right? So what we're saying is that in 3 out of 10 years, they will get tax exemptions. And that's a good piece. The second piece is in which direction do we do the startup? So for example, India's growth story in the last couple of decades has been IT and IT services predominantly. Now what we're looking at, we're trying to focus on certain sectors, one of them being the drone sector. So I think there is a lot of incentives which has been given in sustainability sectors, startups dealing with those sectors. There is a lot of incentives which is also given in startups dealing with manufacturing drones for various end users. It can be manufacturing drones for agriculture, manufacturing drones for food tech, for various reasons, for defense related purposes, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that we will develop ourselves as the global capital for certain sectors, and that's how the incentive has been laid out. Apart from that, I think a very important point is, because see, startup, a very important point is what you raised in terms of India's score with respect to the global population as far as ease of business development is concerned. Now, here I would like to bring out a few points. One is the fact that it is not about only promoting a certain sector of startup. It is also about the platform that you're creating, by virtue of which individuals like us can very easily start a business, close a business, conduct or get various approvals for doing a business, and so on and so forth. I think several things have happened around that piece. For example, I talked about the startup for drone. They call it the Drone Shakti initiative. Apart from that, in terms of India's position in ease of doing business. That has also improved substantially. There are a lot of schemes which has been, they have taken a target to improve the ranking and rating, and a lot of measures have been taken to ensure that we have a single window clearance, especially for projects related to sustainability and environment. You're on mute.
So as you mentioned, it is very important to project ourselves in a particular product or a service rather than just trying everything else. So in that way, we have to appreciate the government's vision, saying that going forward, we are going to specialize in this particular aspect and show to the world that our strength is here. Probably the kind of incentives and the kind of facilities that has been extended in this particular area will inspire more and more people to join this area of startup. Chinmay, my next question is to you. One thing that always bothers everyone is this fiscal deficit. So as I mentioned, always the projected fiscal deficit keeps getting revised and it keeps growing higher and higher. So this year's fiscal deficit is around 6.9%. Can you just elaborate what does it actually mean? And how does the government deal with it? Because it is like a kind of impact which goes on from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, it keeps going on. So what is the way to address this fiscal deficit? And going forward, is there any way that we cross this barrier? That is one question. And secondly, as we were discussing in the beginning also, revenues, major revenue to the government comes through the tax collections. One is direct and indirect taxes. According to you, what is the actual composition of these tax collections in the total taxes that the government collects, and which component should be higher according to you?
Yeah, so that's actually, I mean, it's a very good question, whether direct tax should be more or indirect tax should be more. The thing is, always I say that direct tax is nothing but they'll come and ask, hey, I need money, and you give the money. So that is direct tax. Indirect tax is nothing but they just come and search your pocket and take off your money. You will not be knowing whether they have taken money or not. So that is the major difference between the direct tax and the indirect tax. So if you ask me, I would say that direct tax should be more than the indirect taxation. Why? Because the thing is, if I go to some walk and drink some coffee or eat some idli, the 5% GST I'm going to pay. I have to pay the 5% GST on that 50 rupees or 30 rupees, whatever I'm eating. So what will happen is whatever single penny we are going to spend, we are paying tax on that. We don't know, because for example, a common man, he is spending, say for example, 500 to 1000 rupees per day for the petrol or for the food or for anything. He is paying more than like 180 rupees to 200 as a tax. We don't know. We just go and buy the stuffs and think that, okay, fine, we are not going to pay the tax, but it won't work like that, right? So each and every man, whether he's a poor or rich, for each and every segment, the government is putting the tax. And so it's actually a heavy burden for the common man or the middle class people. So government should think on that. And I personally feel that the direct tax should be more rather than the indirect taxation. And I just want to add one more thing, the transactional tax, right? So Subramania Swami, I think 7 years back only, he just told that the income tax should be abolished and transactional tax should come. In a one way, it's very good that income tax they should abolish, but in another way, so it's not good for the development for development of the India. Why? Because most of you might be knowing, the person paying the income tax is going to invest in various tax saving schemes, right? Mutual funds or LIC or ELSS and everything. And more than 50 to 60% of the people, they are investing in those Chapter 60 deductions, say for mutual fund, just to take the advantage of the tax saving. And the next day, the government comes and say that, so there will not be any income tax from 2023 onwards. The most of the people, more than 60% of the people, not going to invest on any of these Chapter 60 deduction segments. what will happen is there will be a problem with the mutual funds, or problem for the mutual funds, ELSS, all the investments will come down, right? So those investments are pre-locked, 3 years, 5 years. Those investments the government can utilize for the purpose, and the FD, if I open and it's locked for the 5 years, I'm just talking only about the tax saving schemes. So what will happen is that 5 years, the particular bank can utilize, and they can just lend those money, right? So that's how it works. So that's why I just personally feel that the government should not completely abolish this income tax kind of things. They can just make sure that the middle class, those who are coming in the bracket of 5 to 10 lakhs, they're not going to pay any extra tax, because 20% is huge. I think if you're earning like 10 lakhs after all the deduction, you have to pay like more than like 1.3 lakhs as a tax. So it's actually a burden for the normal common man. So that's why I would say that they should think on this. And the transactional tax also, again, the people will say that I'm paying the GST, on top of that I have to pay the transaction tax. So again, it's like complicated things. Rather than just establishing the new reform or the new taxation form, the government should think on the income tax, and instead of collecting the indirect tax more, the direct tax should be direct tax should more. The government should collect more. So that's first part. And the second part is this deficit. So in simple terms, deficit is nothing but when your income is lesser than the expenditure. So there comes this deficit, right? So that's why what will happen is government will estimate. So these are all the income from various sources, all this inclusive revenue as well as the capital revenue, as well as the revenue as well as the capital expenditure. When the expenditure is more than the revenue, there comes the deficit. So generally what will happen is moderate fiscal deficit is good for the economy. So we cannot say that, okay, fine, the particular country has the deficit, means the expenditure is more than the revenue. That's why that particular country cannot develop. We cannot say like that. Why? Because moderate deficit, say for example, this year 6.9%, I think earlier it was 6.8%, if I'm not wrong. So it has been increased to 6.9%. What will happen is, for what purpose government is spending those money? In this year, they have been, I think, they are focused on the capital expenditure. So that's why all this infrastructure or whatever the government is planning, it's all good, right? So yeah, of course, it's called as a GDP, 6.9%, but fiscal deficit is also 6.9%. So what will happen is, when the expenditure is more, the government, you cannot think that the particular government is not doing good, or that particular country is not doing good. Even the US is maintaining the moderate fiscal deficit. So if what happens if the fiscal deficit go on, again that money outflow will increase, and the increase in the money lending will increase. Thereby what will happen is it lends to the inflation. So thereby the government should maintain the moderate fiscal deficit. I don't say that the deficit is bad for the development of the country, but the moderate fiscal deficit is good for the development of country. So that's my view.
Okay, thanks, Chinmay. In fact, I wanted to ask you about Subramaniam Swami's theory of abolishing the income tax. Good that you covered that.
Yeah.
So as you rightly mentioned, it may be impossible to abolish income tax completely. Maybe some kind of a rationalization is going to help. So now we are already at 7:35. I think we will open now the forum for students Q&A. Lakshmi, has the announcement been done?
Ma'am, sorry, if I may just add one point, because I think you asked about, of course, very related point which Chinmay alluded to, and also the fact that how do we fund the fiscal deficit, right? So in terms of numbers, we are at around 16,61,000 crores. That's the number that we have to, that's a deficit number. The intention for the government for the next year is to fill that particular number by borrowing from the market, which is nothing but your G-Secs and T-bill rate at which they borrow. That's around 11,50,000 crores. There are certain securities against small savings. They plan to pick up around 4,25,000 crores from that. You have the state provident funds, which should give you around 20,000 odd crores. Then you have internal debts and public account, right, which the government has. That will give you around very small amount, 3 to 4 lakh crores. and external debt would be around, let's say, roughly 20,000 odd crores. So that's the broad pro forma that the government has done to bridge the fiscal deficit that they have for the next year. That I thought I'll just highlight that.
Okay, thank you, Indran, for sharing that information. So now, if we observe the chat box, yeah, yes, you can read out, Lakshmi.
Okay, so first question is 30% tax on crypto will stop people from investing in Indian crypto, which will be created by RBI? So basically, they are asking whether this tax that has been implemented on crypto will that stop people from investing in Indian crypto market?
First of all, as I was explaining this crypto, right? The RBI did not tell that it's going to do the crypto as BTC or something. It's a digitalization of the normal fiat money. So that's why whether you are going to pay tax on that your normal money, definitely not, right? So it is not you are going to do the marketing or do trading on the cryptos which is created by the RBI. And of course, they have to give the further notification on this VDA, which will digitalization asset as well as the digitalization money, which is given by the RBI. So as of now, there won't be any tax on the digitalization done by the RBI. So it's just on the cryptos and the VDAs, just for the clarification. And I just want to take one more question. One person has asked, and I think it went off, the updating the income tax return. So the government told that you can just update and file the income tax return. So for example, 1920 return, you cannot file now. So it was earlier provision, but now you can file the return. But the thing is, the facility to update the return is not applicable if you have the loss return. Means if you have the loss, then you cannot update and file the return. And if you have any refund, then also you cannot update and file the return. Just one of my friends, they called, and his father was earning some around 10 lakhs of interest. He told that he forgot to add those interest income, and whether he can just include those income and file the return. Of course he can do that, but the thing is here, one thing we just need to think that, so 30% normal tax will go, and on top of that 234A, B, C, so all the late filing interest will go, and on top of that 234F late filing fees will go, and on top of that 25% tax you have to pay on that tax. Means almost 50% will be gone. So I don't like to use the word facility to update the return. It's just a normal outflow of the return, right? So it's just one of the provision done by the government. I think that question answers.
Yes. Coming to the next question, actually this has been in a way answered, but we can summarize the 3 key positive and negative decisions taken in this budget.
Okay. So the personal view is that, my personal view, of course, they could have just done something for the normal income tax payers. They could have just increased the threshold limit, or they could have just extended Chapter 68 deduction. And the second thing is ITC. I'm talking about the GST, ITC, input tax credit. They did not properly said that you can just take the ITC on certain segments. They could have just properly cleared on that. And one more thing I just feel negative is, it's just my personal view that the freebies and the BPL card holders, so they're just giving the facilities, and a lot of facilities are taken by the people. But the thing is, there is no proper, I could say that proper rules or regulation, whether they are going, they are giving to a proper person or not. So some or other way, the government should think that the freebies and other facilities are going to the right person. They should think on that. And I think LTCG surcharge reduction for a common man. Yeah, so this is one of the I think reform done by the government. The LTCG, they have capped at 15% surcharge. So earlier it was 10 to 20% for, depending upon the segment or the types of the capital asset you hold. So now there's a cap of 15%. Of course, for everyone the cap is applicable as of now. And if you're trading in the stock market, more than 1 lakh profit you gain, again we have to pay tax on that LTCG. If it is Indian company also, on top of paying the STT and all other taxes, we have to pay the LTCG tax. So government could have thought whether the normal man who's trading in the stock market, if it is an Indian company, whether you have to pay the tax or not. So those things I found it's like negative. I think, sir, you can just add on some positive parts because you already covered all those things.
Yeah, sure. So let me add some color to the, the question, which is some three key positive and negative decisions, right? So I would say the positive obviously would be, ease of doing business, EODB 2.0, right? That's what is one of the very important policy which the government has announced, ease of doing business, EODB 2.0, under which they have, brought in certain regulations, like there is a trust-based governance which will be introduced. The new phase of EODB that will entail active involvement of the states, because what has happened is government and states were moving not necessarily always in the same direction. Integration of central and state level systems through IT bridges. You don't have a separate system for the central and you don't have a separate system for the state, so that information can be disseminated without any pilferation. Single point access for all citizen-centric services. It's very weird that my ration card is, if I move from one state to the other, I'll have to apply for everything. Not only me as an individual, a corporate, whenever they jump states, they have to apply everything afresh. And obviously reduced overlap in compliances. So that's some of the key things which the government is trying to introduce through EODB 2.0. There is a lot of impetus which is given towards sustainable initiatives. Like you would have heard about the Parivesh scheme, which is a step towards single window green clearance. This will be expanded to provide information to applicants based on location of units and other specific approvals. So all your clearances towards environment, forest, wildlife, coastal regulation zone, everything can be done under that particular window. Insolvency law, and that's a very important parameter when it comes to ease of doing business. Insolvency law has been, I would not say it has been completely, simplified, but a large step has been taken, and let's see how it is being implemented. They are amending the insolvency laws, IBCs, as we say, to facilitate cross-border insolvency cases. And they're also creating a Center for Processing Accelerated Corporate Exit, which they call CPACE. CPACE, Center for Processing Accelerated Corporate Exit, that they're planning to set up to reduce voluntary winding up timeline from 2 years to 6 months. Trust me, it's a huge step, because a lot of companies, both foreign and Indian, at the time of filing bankruptcy, they don't file bankruptcy because they think that it's very difficult to come out of that bankruptcy proceedings. And this will go a long way in terms of helping, the government. Negatives, I would quickly touch upon a few things. What I think, I would not call that negative, because as I mentioned, as I started my conversation saying that the finance minister has to balance a lot of things, and it's not easy. So it's not negative, but I have my concern on the investments made in health, because, that's really, 75,000 crores was spent in health and medical and public health, or health expenditure as we call in budgetary terms, last year. This has been reduced to 41,000 crores this year, 45% drop. Now, one can argue that that was a special situation because the government has to put in a lot of money for vaccination drive and so on and so forth. We have done reasonably well in vaccination drive. The target was to complete 100% dual vaccination by December 31st, 2021. I think we have reached around 65-70% kind of a number, which is not bad in a country like India. That's a published number. I would say still there are several variants coming in. So the entire 35,000 crore which the government has spent in vaccination has been completely taken out, and it is reduced to 41,000 crores. I think that's a concern, because some amount of government initiatives still need to be taken for to continue with the vaccination drive, because we are now talking about booster and certain other things. That's one. The second piece which I would definitely like to highlight is disinvestment. As I mentioned, apart from Air India and Neelanchal, we have hardly seen any disinvestments happening. And I think we need to, aggressively do disinvestments in the next year so that we can get those money which is required to drive the capex initiatives and other initiatives that the government has taken. Mind you, we have a situation with Brent, $90 a barrel, and if it goes to $125, $126 a barrel, that will create a huge impact on us. I think if I'm not wrong, we import around $111 billion of fuel, and that's huge. So if it increases by $40, $50 a barrel, to that extent, it will increase the deficit number, and it's not easy to breach. So I think it is very important to privatize a few government initiatives. And the last piece which I would like to talk about is the bond issuance. Okay, there's one more point. There's a cutback on food subsidy, but I am of those school of thoughts. People believe that if you're cutting food subsidy, then what happens is immediate multiplier effect gets impacted. I understand that economically that is true, but I'm of that school of thought who believes that subsidy is not the right way to reform your agriculture. You need to work on agricultural infrastructure, on farm equipments, and so on and so forth, to build a robust agriculture economy of the country. Because if you keep doing subsidy, that doesn't help in the long run. And remember, our per acre production across the crop segment, whether it's a cash crop or a food crop, across the crop segment is much lower compared to our developed economies like China, European nations, and US. So I think I would not take that as a negative. That's personal opinion. And finally, the bond issuances. There's a sharp jump in FY23, gross borrowings at 14.95 trillion rupees and net at 11 trillion rupees. It's much higher than market expectations. So bond markets will definitely fret an increase in borrowings, and absence of any tax measures to pave the way for bonds to be Euroclear eligible can lead to, which in turn will lead to inclusion in global indices, can be a little bit of a problem, to my opinion, when you go to borrow from external countries for bridging your fiscal deficit. So that's largely what I have for you.
Thank you, sir, for that answer. So we'll take up the next question. So this is regarding LTCG surcharge. Can you please elaborate on the effects of LTCG surcharge reduction and option of refiling tax returns?
I think Chinmay just responded to that
already
earlier.
covered this. The LTCG, earlier it was like 10 to 20% based on the different class of assets. Now it capped to 15%. So it's just a one rate. And updating filing of return, I just told that it's not a facility. It's just the thing that the government wants to have more money. So that's why they have just given this facility. So that's it.
Okay, and the next question is in the telecom sector. The telecommunication sector are covering their losses by increasing the rates of all bills of commutation and by 5G spectrum. The rates will go high. How can an individual will afford those silly charges? So basically the perspective for telecom sector.
Okay, let me take that. Look, what is happening in the telecommunication industry in terms of increasing the ARPU, right? Any telecom industry is measured by ARPU, ARPU as you call, average revenue per user. That is increasing. Now, please appreciate that that's necessarily not a budgetary phenomenon. Yeah. If you look at the telecom industry, there were around 6 to 7 players 2 years back. Today, there are 2 to 3 players. So basically what is happening is it's a phased consolidation which is happening, and the 2 large players who are still there in the market, they have captured the market and ensure that others go out of competition by reducing rates and giving you freebies and acquired customers by making losses. So what you are seeing now in terms of escalated cost and escalated tariffs is inevitable. I would reckon that this has nothing to do, or not nothing, but this is limited thing to do with respect to the budgetary allocation. This is more to do with the way the telecom industry is getting, shaped up, and it's there in across many industries as well. And finally, in terms of your 5G spectrum allocation, if at all it happens, that will help enhance our digital infrastructure. You will be able to do more and more of, your efficiency will increase. And of course, it will give the necessary ammunition to the government in terms of getting more money to spend on the initiatives the government has taken.
Okay, sir. One more question related to it is 50,000 CR investment in BSNL. Is it prudent considering the bad performance of company and low market standing?
I think that's, that answers, whoever has asked you the question has asked us this question has answered himself or herself. And that is precisely why we are talking about privatization. It doesn't make sense to put in good money after bad money, right? If you are doing certain reforms, I'm not for privatization. I'm not saying that you privatize everything, but in this era, you cannot afford to put in good money after bad money. If you are taking reforms to ensure that BSNL comes up with, in the same way the other two players are performing, Airtel and Reliance, if you can ensure measures to improve efficiency of BSNL as a company, I would love it. But in a scenario when it's not happening and it's not happening for years together, I don't see a rationale for putting, as I mentioned, good money after bad money.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that answer. So last two questions that we'll be taking. One is, what is the rationale behind not including petrol and diesel under GST framework? This move will definitely improve the purchasing power of people.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, if you include the petrol under the GST purview, what will happen is every state will have the same rate, right? So there won't be like what will happen now. What's happening is every state has different rates because of the state tax. Central tax we have to pay, and again the state tax, which varies. If it comes under the purview of the GST, what will happen is it's like a one rate all over the state will flow. Of course, here and there some paisa here and there it will go because of the travel, transport and everything. But it's a good, according to me, it's a good to bring the petrol under the GST purview. And I think he or she mentioned that it will increase the purchasing power of the common man, right? Of course, if it is a one rate, definitely it will increase. But the thing is, you have to think that we have to use the EVs, right? The EVs are the future of the country. So please go and use the electric vehicles. Of course, I'm not a ambassador of the electric vehicles, but just giving my view on that.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that answer. And one last question is about LIC IPO. So the student is asking, will it make a change in the market?
Yeah, it's whether it's going to change in the market or not. Definitely, little bit it will change because as far as I know, the people are taking out of their money from their present portfolio just because they want to invest in LIC IPO, right? So that's why we may see that because of those things. So everywhere like LIC IPO, we have to invest, and all the portfolio we have to like maintain in such a way that we have to get the more return. All those talks are going on. We cannot like strictly say that whether bringing the IPOs in the market, whether it is related to budget directly. If you ask me, it's not directly related to the budget. But the thing is, of course, since it's a government owned, we have to be like think that if we invest in the companies like LIC, definitely it's going to be worth it or not. We have to wait and watch. But as far as I know, the market is so volatile that everyone is taking out their money just because they want to invest in LIC IPO. A little bit volatility is more till the LIC IPO closes, I think. And also Nirmala ji said that they're going to do in FY23 this year only. So it's a good initiation from the government.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that answer. Actually, one student has just posted one more question. This is the last that we will be taking for today. What will be your take on various allegations from foreign entities like Antrix Davis and other tussles on India's financials? So Indranil sir or Chinmay sir, whoever would like to take this.
Is it directly related to budget?
I hope
Yeah.
so. Related, yeah.
So I think like, I don't know whether he asked on FDI or not. I know that issues are really there, like Vodafone case. I just don't want to talk on that because I don't think it's directly related to the budget. Rather, I just put it in this way that FDI, whether foreign direct investment, whether it's good for the country or not, I'd say it's very good for the country because the manufacturing and other sector, the development of the other sector will grow. Thereby, the employment opportunity also will grow. So FDI is, good for the development of the country as well as the individual. And I just don't want to speak on this particular case. So, sir, if you just want to give the insight of this, you can just take it up.
I mean, controversial topics to be okay. So, but I think, to Chinmay's point, right? Very important to understand the fact that what's the role that FDIs and FII flows plays, in the overall investment or overall economy of the country. In fact, talking about FDI, speaking on FDI, and to promote education, there had been certain leeways which has been given in terms of the contribution or percentage of FDI that can happen in education for a certain period. That's also one of the things which has been pointed out, and this is definitely more important. We need money, right? We are a deficit country. We are, we need capital. Unless we have capital, we cannot deploy that capital for our growth and development, right? So FDIs are always welcome. In what form and manner it comes, there are, written down large regulations which are there, which talk about how FDI should happen. FII flows are a little volatile. It's called hot money. And you would have seen that in the last couple of months, in last 4 or 5 months, there had been a lot of FII outflows, which has happened primarily because of US guys have raised taxes, raised rates, and that's where money is going in that direction. But our capital market has a lot of dependency on foreign institutional flows, right? And whenever that happens, you always see market tanks or market goes up depending on which way the flow is happening. So we would just like to leave it that, saying that as a country, we need capital and any form of capital is welcome. Obviously, we have to deploy prudence while taking the money from others. That's given.
Thank you, sir. With that, we end this very informative session. I would just like to take the opportunity to thank all the panelists, Indranil sir, Chinmay sir, and Hema ma'am for giving such insights to our students, and also all the participants. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.